Are you looking for stories about resilience that inspire you? Do you enjoy it when justice finds its way, even if it's through the shortcuts of revenge? And do you love being caught off guard by the twists and turns of life? If the answer is yes, this is your channel. Unravel each story with us, a labyrinth of emotions that will keep you intrigued until the very last second. Be part of this community, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, leave your appreciation with a like and come, because today's story holds emotions in store for you that you never imagined. The sweet, heady scent of gardenias hung in the humid air of that autumn afternoon. Anna felt the gentle touch of the breeze on her loose hair as her eyes scanned for the umpteenth time the sparkling message on her cell phone screen. Each word Kayo said seemed etched in fire in her memory, a bittersweet melody that had once lulled her dreams and now echoed like a piercing lament. The promise of a future together, built brick by brick with whispered vows and ambitious plans, crumbled fragilely like a sandcastle under the fury of the tide. That fateful "we need to talk" foreshadowed the abyss that was now opening beneath her feet, swallowing her certainty and exposing the fragility of her illusions. The sun, once a radiant accomplice to their passionate encounters, now hid lazily among the dense clouds, as if the sky itself shared the melancholy that settled in Anna's heart. She clutched the small silver pendant that Kayo had given her on their first anniversary together, its cold surface contrasting with the feverish heat of her trembling hands. A sharp pang of anguish ran through her chest, the anticipation of the imminent blow eroding her serenity. The cafe, once a stage for laughter and whispered confidences, was now transformed into a scene of silent apprehension. Anna watched every face that entered, searching in vain for the familiar figure she so longed and feared to meet. The insistent ticking of the clock on the wall seemed to amplify the torture of waiting, each second stretching out like an eternity full of uncertainty. The animated conversations around her sounded like a distant noise, incapable of dissipating the turbulence that agitated her interior. She mentally replayed every moment of the last few months, searching in vain for some sign, some crack that would foretell the imminent catastrophe. Had she been so blind, so absorbed in the bubble of her own love, that she had not noticed the subtle signs of a silent separation? That slight tremor in his voice on the phone, the fleeting sparkle in his eyes that seemed to gradually fade. Small fragments that now fit together in a painful mosaic. The waitress approached, offering more coffee, but Anna just shook her head, the lump in her throat preventing any intake. Anxiety was growing thicker, like a relentless shadow that enveloped her completely. Finally, he appeared in the doorway, his silhouette hesitant in the dim light of the evening. Kayo looked different, the easy smile that had so enchanted her replaced by a dark and evasive expression. The hug that followed was brief, almost formal, a cold omen of the distance that had settled between them. They sat in silence, the atmosphere charged with palpable tension, the words hanging in the air like indecisive ghosts. Anna watched Kayo's fingers restlessly on the table, avoiding his gaze, and a cold foreboding ran down her spine. She knew deep in her soul that the words that were about to be uttered would shatter the world she knew. This was the crucial moment, the crossroads where their paths would diverge, sealing a fate she had never imagined. Anna's breathing became shallow, her heart racing in a frantic rhythm as she awaited the sentence that would change her life forever. Kayo's voice, once melodious and comforting, now sounded distant, almost cold. The words he spoke cut through the air like sharp blades, each syllable echoing in the oppressive silence of the coffee shop. The explanation, confused and hesitant, spoke of incompatibilities, of paths that would inevitably separate, of a future that he no longer envisioned with her. For Anna, It was as if the ground beneath her feet had opened up, swallowing her hopes and dreams. The tears she had tried so hard to hold back finally overflowed, running hot and bitter down her face. Disbelief was etched in her teary eyes, as if she could not conceive of the reality of those cruel words. How could that love that seemed so solid and eternal fall apart like that so suddenly, without warning? Betrayal was not just the loss of a partner, but the demolition of an imagined future, the death of an essential part of her own identity. The world around Anna seemed blurry, distorted by the searing pain that consumed her. The voices in the background blended into an indistinct hum as she struggled to assimilate the brutality of those words. Every shared memory, every whispered vow, now became a painful stab in her wounded heart. This was the man she loved, the man in whom she had placed all her expectations of happiness, and here he was before her, undoing the bonds she believed were indissoluble. The feeling of emptiness was overwhelming, as if a black hole had opened in her chest, sucking out all the joy and hope that resided there. Disbelief gradually gave way to a dull anger, a growing indignation at the coldness and apparent ease with which he discarded what was sacred to her. Anna could barely hear Kaio's final words, her mind absorbed in the piercing pain that paralyzed her. He stood up, the shadow of a fleeting remorse crossing his face, and walked away, leaving her there, shattered and alone amidst the indifferent hubbub of the coffee shop. That was the end, the final point in a story that she believed was only the beginning. Reality hit her with the force of a blow, leaving her dazed and disoriented. She sat for a long time, the tears drying on her face, her gaze fixed on a fixed point in the void. The disappointment of love enveloped her like a heavy shroud, suffocating any trace of hope. That was not only the end of a relationship, but the mourning for a future that would never exist. The pain was excruciating, but in the midst of the suffering, a small spark of resilience began to ignite within her. The days that followed were a blur of pain and confusion. Anna isolated herself in her apartment, the refuge she once shared with Kaio now, echoing with the deafening silence of her absence. Memories invaded her mind like relentless waves, every object, every corner of the apartment evoking moments of happiness, now tinged with bitterness. She relived the happy moments incessantly, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong, searching in vain for answers that might never come. The nights were long and sleepless, filled with nightmares that brought her back to the cruelty of that goodbye. The food lost its flavor. The music sounded dissonant, and the outside world seemed distant and indifferent to her pain. The wound in her heart was deep, and healing seemed like a distant mirage. Slowly, hesitantly, Anna began to emerge from her isolation. The calls and messages from her friends were a thin thread connecting her to the outside world, a reminder that she was not completely alone. Meetings were difficult. Words of comfort felt hollow in the face of the magnitude of her pain, but their presence was a gentle balm on her wounded soul. She tried hard to smile, to join in the conversations, but the shadow of disappointment still hung over her, obscuring her joy. Every show of affection, every word of support, was a small step toward healing, a reminder that life went on, even after the storm. In a gesture of self-care, Anna decided to change her surroundings. Small renovations in her apartment, rearranging the furniture, replacing objects that reminded her of Kaio. Each physical change was a reflection of an inner transformation that was beginning to take shape. She rediscovered hobbies that she had neglected, found solace in reading and music, allowing new passions to fill the void left by absence. Solitary walks in the park became a therapeutic ritual, a moment of connection with nature that calmed her turbulent mind. Slowly, the fog of pain began to dissipate. revealing a horizon that was still uncertain, but permeated by a faint hope. Time, relentless in its passage, began to weave a new plot in Inna's life. The memories of Kaio were still present, but the sharp pain began to give way to a gentle melancholy, devoid of the paralyzing suffering of before. She realized that the disappointment, as painful as it was, had taught her valuable lessons about herself, about her own strengths and vulnerabilities. The fragility of idealized love had given way to a more realistic and mature understanding of relationships. Anna began to reconnect with her own dreams and ambitions, those that had, in a way, been put on the back burner during the relationship. A new flame of self-discovery and empowerment began to shine in her eyes. In a photography course that she had decided to take for pure pleasure, Anna met new people with different stories and perspectives. The casual conversations, the laughter shared during field lessons, the camaraderie that developed in the group, all of this contributed to expanding her world and dispelling the loneliness that had imprisoned her for so long. She discovered within herself a passion for the art of capturing moments, of immortalizing the ephemeral beauty of the world through the lens of her camera. This new passion became a form of expression, a creative outlet that helped her process her emotions and find beauty even in the smallest things. A year had passed since the painful separation. Anna looked in the mirror and saw a different woman from the one who had broken down in the coffee shop. The scars of disappointment were still there, but they were no longer open wounds. They were marks of a battle won, reminders of her resilience and her ability to overcome adversity. Her eyes shone with a new intensity, a mix of self-confidence and serenity. She had rebuilt her life, brick by brick, with her own hands, discovering an inner strength she never imagined she had. Kaio's absence no longer defined her happiness. She had learned to find joy within herself. At a photography exhibition, Anna met Kaio again. The encounter was unexpected, a brief moment frozen in time amidst the crowd. He seemed surprised to see her, perhaps even a little disconcerted by the aura of confidence and serenity that emanated from her. They exchanged a few formal words, a brief nod of recognition. For Anna, that encounter did not awaken the piercing pain of the past, but rather a feeling of distance, as if he were a figure from a distant past, someone who no longer belonged to her present. She realized how much she had changed, how much she had grown, since that fateful day in the coffee shop. That reunion served as a definitive end to a painful chapter in her life. Anna continued to follow her new path with determination and enthusiasm. Her photography career flourished, her exhibitions were praised, and she felt fulfilled in her passion. Her friendships grew stronger, and she allowed herself to experience new things, open to the possibility of a new love, but without the urgency or emotional dependence of before. She had learned that happiness did not depend on another person, but rather on her own ability to love herself and build a full and meaningful life. The heartbreak, although painful, had become a catalyst for her personal growth, pushing her to discover her true strength and achieve emotional independence. As she watched the orange sunset that colored the sky over Diadema, Anna felt a deep gratitude for the journey she had traveled. The pain of disappointment had been intense, but she had overcome it with resilience and courage. She had rebuilt herself stronger and wiser, learning to love herself first. The future appeared as a blank canvas, full of possibilities and new adventures. Anna smiled, not with the naive joy of before, but with the serenity of someone who had overcome a great trial and emerged stronger than ever. She had turned things around, finding light amidst the darkness and flourishing in her own time and in her own way. The story of her heartbreak had become an inspiring testimony of her inner strength and her ability to be reborn.